Hello there, and welcome to the Scruffy Looking Nerdhers podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, bringing you news on all things nerd and geek related. This week's coverage will include an update on the Disney-Fox merger, Star Wars, The Walking Dead news, and much, much more. So, here we go. First up, I have some housekeeping for you. Some of you might have noticed, others might not have, but I have removed the episode number from the titles of the episodes, and moving forward, I will not have them in the titles. This is due to Apple sending out an email to podcasters stating that having them in the titles of the episodes could flag the podcast for review, which could lead to the temporary or potentially permanent removal of said podcasts. So, I'm playing it safe, as I'm a small fish in a big pond, and I proactively removed the episode numbers from the titles. And lastly, I will be at VisionCon in Springfield, Missouri, May 10th and 11th, and will be showcasing the convention across my social media accounts. So, be sure to keep your eye out for those posts. I'm going to be also interviewing some guests as well, so hopefully I'll have some video interviews with some guests and creators to upload to my YouTube channel. If you're going to be attending that convention, let me know, because I'd like to grab a slice of pizza with you. So, starting things off in the gaming report, first up, a new trailer for Mortal Kombat 11 just dropped the other day, and it's the reveal trailer for Johnny Cage, and it is phenomenal. He's still the same Johnny Cage, but he definitely has kind of like a Bruce Campbell meets Nathan Fillion persona. Johnny Cage still sports the same trademarks that have made him a franchise favorite over the years. He's still got that strange green glow of energy that surrounds him when performing certain moves and allows him to shoot fireballs. He's also still able to perform the splits in order to punch his opponents in the crotch, and he boasts a very methodical, almost choreographed fight style. What's more amazing about this version of Cage, though, is the many very clever ways they've utilized his character and his background as a film star. The best example is his ability to call in a stunt double to hold his opponent in place. And then there's another where he pulls out an award and drives it through the head of an opponent. Also, his finisher, which sees him perform multiple takes on his fatality attempt, is simply a beautiful piece of characterization. If you get a chance to check out the trailer, I highly recommend it. I will put a link in the show notes. Number 2, this comes from Brian Crescente from Variety. Skybound Entertainment, the company founded by David Alpert and The Walking Dead's Robert Kirkman, terminated its contract Tuesday with developer Starbreeze Studios and killed off the studio's game Overkill's The Walking Dead, saying it did not meet the company's standards. The game will no longer be released on console, and Valve is finalizing its strategy for how to handle the sale of the PC version of the game on Steam. Not coming to consoles. That's it for that game. I don't know what's going on with Starbreeze, but it's really just not looking good for him. I don't know. I will probably be covering Starbreeze's closure probably in the future sometime. I hate to say it, but that's kind of how I see it going. Number 3. This one comes from Nathan Grayson over at Kotaku. And it's kind of a long one, so bear with me on this. Edgy marketing decisions have a way of blowing up in companies' faces. Rarely do they so immediately and spectacularly detonate like this. THQ Nordic, publisher of games like Darksiders 3, decided to host an AMA and Ask Me Anything on 8chan, an image board notorious for everything from Gamergate ties to stalking and harassment to child porn. Bafflingly, it baffles them. THQ Nordic thought it would go just fine. Predictably, it did not. The company announced this plan earlier today in a tweet saying that the opportunity was there and we took it. And that we got approached in a very friendly and polite manner and were assured said person, shout out to Mark, will take care of the nasty stuff. This prompted a titanic wave of backlash from THQ fans. Mark, whoever he is, did not take care of the nasty stuff. The ensuing AMA contained pornographic imagery, Hitler reference, and memes, copious questions about lolly, which is underage child art, racial slurs, and so much more. There were also more standard questions about THQ Nordic's future plans, which PR and marketing director Philip Brock replied to. In one case, a user said, quote, "Please don't censor any games nor appeal to the SJW crowd. You guys are doing fine as is," to which Brock replied, "Thanks, we'll try to stay that way." The content of 8chan users' questions and posts is not all that surprising given the board's history, something a PR person like Brock should have been aware of. In 2013, 8chan creator Frederick Brennan decided that 4chan, then regarded to be one of the internet's most lawless lands, had become too controlling and founded a, quote, "a free speech friendly alternative." 8chan frequently takes that stance to its utmost extreme to the point that it was blacklisted from Google search in 2015 for containing, quote-unquote, suspected child abuse content. When 4chan gave Gamergate the boot, many users relocated to 8chan, which still serves as a hub for Gamergate-related discussion. 2 hours after the AMA began, THQ Nordic issued an apology on Twitter, as follows: "I personally agreed to this AMA without doing my proper due diligence to understand the history and the controversy of the site. I do not condone child pornography, white supremacy, or racism in any shape or form," wrote Brock, adding that he is terribly sorry for the short-sightedness of my, with an exclamation mark, decision, and promised to be far more vigorous in my assessment of these activities in the future. Brock further clarified his stance in a statement sent to Kotaku, saying, "I do not condone child pornography, white supremacy, or racism in any shape or form. This was not about being edgy. This blew up, and I very much regret to have done it in the first place." Now, initially, when I first saw this come across my Twitter feed, which it was insane, I thought that their account had somehow gotten hacked. But the following events seemed to have proved me wrong. Before this, I had heard of 8chan being mentioned in YouTube comments of more, let's say, alternative viewpoints, but never knew how bad it really was until researching for this news piece. But to do an AMA on a site and not know to do any sort of research on it, it literally took me a quick search of the Googs for me to find out about 8chan. So this apology almost means nothing due to their comment of the, quote, "this is happening," and they knew that it's weird and something that probably isn't a good idea. He had to have known, or he just didn't do his due diligence like he said, which I don't buy. I just don't believe him. Brock was responding to the comments of the lolly pictures and racism and white supremacy and not really condemning it. So obviously he knew. So I don't know if he's a reoccurring member of that site, so that's why they did it. I don't know. But I don't think THQ Nordic should face any backlash like they have been. People make mistakes. But I think moving forward, they need to be more aware of what they're doing and paying more attention to what they're doing, especially in regards to a company that makes games based on children licenses from companies like Disney and Nickelodeon. Next time, just do an AMA on Reddit. Next time, do better, THQ. And lastly, on the Gaming Report number 4, this comes from Owen Good over at Polygon. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the forthcoming action-adventure game from Respawn Entertainment, will be revealed at Star Wars Celebration this April, Lucasfilm announced this Wednesday. The game will be shown off during a special panel on Saturday, April 13th. The game's story involves a, quote, "a Padawan who survived Order 66, and it is set in the time after the fall of the Jedi Order. That, of course, references the events of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, when Palpatine exterminated the Jedi. So this game will be set in an era explored by like the Rogue One film and the Force Unleashed video games, even though those games are no longer considered canon. So I, along with numerous other Star Wars podcasts, at least the ones I listen to. Go check out Clashing Sabers, those guys are awesome. And video creators such as Star Wars Explained. But we've theorized that Celebration is definitely going to be when we're going to be getting a lot of juicy details and trailers and all that good Star Wars-y stuff. So, and it's something we've all been saying for some time. We've all never really thought we would see anything during like the Super Bowl or around Christmas or New Year's or anything like that. But we're still pretty much in the same position we were in the last time we talked about Jedi Fallen Order, which is we don't know much. But I'm looking forward to Star Wars Celebration is definitely an understatement. Moving on to tabletop gaming, it's kind of a two-parter, so it's kind of all from the same source, in a way. So, since the last episode, Wizards of the Coast announced their newest expansion titled Ghosts of Saltmarsh. All the adventures have been faithfully adapted from old editions to the 5th edition rules of Dungeons & Dragons. And furthermore, this book includes details on the port town of Saltmarsh, as well as plenty of hooks to kick off new adventures. You can play through each story in a seafaring campaign, leading your characters from level 1 all the way to level 12, or pull out sections to place in ongoing campaigns in any setting. The appendices also cover mechanics for ship-to-ship combat, new magic items, monsters, and a crap ton more. This is a quote from the creative director of D&D, Mike Merles. He says, "The Saltmarsh series consistently ranks as one of the most popular classic D&D adventures," which is extremely true. With its ties to ocean-based adventuring, it was an obvious step to augment it with additional sea-based adventures and a robust set of rules for managing a nautical campaign. I kind of feel like Matt Mercer's direction he's went with his campaign in the second season of Critical Role, I feel like that's probably played a part as well in, I don't know if he's known ahead of time, which I would imagine he would be, because this book has probably been worked on for some time. But I definitely feel like he probably knew, and I think that's probably another reason why he's taken his campaign to the seas of Taldore. So, I think it's great. I think this is awesome, because I know there's a lot of people, because of the Critical Role campaign, have asked about how to do ship-to-ship combat. People like Adam Coble have gone and explained and given resources on how to do it. I mean, there's tons of things on the Dungeon Masters Guild, which, if you go check that out, there's tons of really great content on there from indie creators. I highly recommend it. But Ghosts of Saltmarsh will release May 21st this year at a price of $49.95, which is pretty standard for new supplements. But also, just the other day, Wizards of the Coast announced 2 new source books geared specifically toward young adventurers. Comic book writer Jim Zub announced that he was helming a new series of D&D books designed to introduce the game to middle school-aged players. The D&D Young Adventures Guide will be a series of books published by 10 Speed Press that will focus on the main aspects of D&D and show the players what they can use to build their characters and adventures. The first 2 books, titled Monsters and Creatures and the other Warriors and Weapons, will release in July of this year, both containing dozens of new illustrations along with guides on the various aspects of D&D. I think there's even like a flow chart that kind of shows people who are unfamiliar with how each class works on what class they should pick based off of the decisions in the flowchart, which I think is phenomenal. Flowcharts are a godsend. They help in so many aspects whenever people are unfamiliar or new to something. So I think that's a great mechanic to add into these supplements. But both books will be over 100 pages long and have retail prices of only $12.99. They're now available for pre-order on Amazon. So this is definitely a great gift for those younglings that have an interest in playing tabletop RPGs. And I love that this is an understanding in the tabletop RPG community with Wizards and all of them that it's nice to give to the OG adventurers and give them content and keep them happy, but also looking forward to the future and younger adventurers who are going to grow up to become older adventurers again. And this is a great way for that, and I think it's great. So I highly recommend these two books if there is that young adventurer in your life that wants to learn how to play tabletop RPGs. So moving on to the last segment, movie and TV news. Number 1, a new spinoff of The Walking Dead is in the works, AMC Networks confirmed during its earnings call with Wall Street analysts. When asked to elaborate, COO Ed Carroll said that the spinoff is in quote-unquote active development. He declined to offer up more info. This news comes on the tail of the news of departures such as Andrew Lincoln and Lauren Cohen from the flagship The Walking Dead show and the series' low ratings in their 9th season. Carroll did go on to say, though, that the fade of the original show should not obscure its status as the number 1 series on cable and the number 2 drama on TV behind NBC's This Is Us. So my take on that is they have The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead. Lincoln is set to star in Walking Dead movies, and Denai Gurira, who's played Michonne, will also be throttling back her presence going into the show's 10th season, which makes sense. She's been in Black Panther, Infinity War. I'm sure she's probably going to continue. She'll probably be in Black Panther 2, the inevitable sequel that they will do for that. So it's no surprise, really, that they want to attempt to start anew and do away with the original flagship show. I originally assumed that's why they launched Fear the Walking Dead, but now it seems like they just want to keep beating a dead corpse. Honestly, the zombie craze was oversaturated, and very few can keep telling stories in the zombie apocalypse setting without it being a rehashed version of something else we've already seen. And with how quickly they move on in that show from villain arc to villain arc, but then drag out complete, just unimportant story elements and character developments when they just turn around and kill the character that they just spent 2 episodes developing, it's no wonder that the ratings have dropped. So, there's your Walking Dead news. Next up this one is a 3-parter. Kevin Tsujihara, chairman and CEO of Warner Brothers, feels the DC expanded universe is on the quote-unquote right track by focusing less on a shared universe and more on the individual characters. In an interview with the LA Times, he said, quote, "The upcoming slate with Shazam, Joker, and Wonder Woman 1984 with Birds of Prey following feels like we're on the right track. We have the right people and the right jobs working on it. The universe isn't as connected as we thought it was going to be 5 years ago." Now, these comments echo what Chairman Toby Emmerich said when he stated that Warner Brothers is now, quote-unquote, less focused on a shared universe after the success of Aquaman. Now, this is what happens when they were trying to get the immediate gratification of what Disney and Marvel spent 10 years building towards. You know, they did Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Wonder Woman, and then Justice League came out and no one cared or even knew who Cyborg was. Not everyone knows Flash's origin. No one knew why Aquaman was such a dude bro. No one knew. So now that they're focusing on individual characters, they can still have a shared universe, but just focus individually first. But then they should really build up for like the fans' trust again before attempting to do another Justice League. And next time, don't just rip off the Infinity Stones story arc that was already being done by Marvel, because it makes your movie just seem really boring and unoriginal. Next up, a new rumor from Matt Reeves' upcoming film, The Batman, suggests that The Dark Knight will be squaring off against more than just one villain in the film, with Forbes suggesting that at least 4 different villains will be in the movie. There's not an official word on which villains will be appearing in the film, But given the large amount of bad guys he's faced off against over the decades across different medias, there's no shortage of options. So far in movies, we've seen the Joker 3 times, Scarecrow, Catwoman twice, Penguin, Riddler, Two-Face, Bane twice, Ra's and Talia al Ghul, Poison Ivy, and Mr. Freeze, also including mob bosses Falcone and Maroni. Reeves has spoken at length recently about his intentions for the film, as followed. It's very much a point-of-view driven noir Batman tale, he told The Hollywood Reporter. It's told very squarely on his shoulders, and I hope it's going to be a story that will be thrilling but also emotional. It's more Batman in his detective mode than we've seen in the films. The comics have a history of that. He's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, and that's not necessarily been a part of what the movies have been. I'd love this to be one where when we go on that journey of tracking down the criminals and trying to solve a crime, it's going to allow his character to have an arc, so that he can go through a transformation. We still don't know who will be wearing the cape and cowl, but we can expect it to be a standalone movie and not connected to the DC Expanded Universe. He's alluded to such, but the Batman premieres in theaters on June 25th, 2021. And his direction that he told The Hollywood Reporter is pretty much what fans want. Fans have been wanting Batman to be more of his detective rather than his punch face guy. Like fans haven't really been wanting that. They've been wanting him to be the world's greatest detective because that's what he's known as. And he hasn't really been doing a whole lot of detective work in those most recent movies. I'm optimistic about Matt Reeves' Batman movie, and we shall see what comes of that. Next up, in this segment, for DC movies, according to sources, Will Smith will not be returning as Deadshot in Suicide Squad 2. As reported by Variety, even though it appears Margot Robbie will return as Harley Quinn, Will Smith will be bowing out of the sequel to 2016's Suicide Squad due to scheduling issues, although the, quote, decision was made on amicable terms between both sides with no hard feelings, end quote. The same sources have said that the studio had wanted Smith and Robbie to return and have the rest of the cast be new faces. Suicide Squad 2 is scheduled to be released in theaters on August 6th, 2021. So if you're kind of noticing a pattern here, there's a lot of 2021 movies happening for the DC movies. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But Will Smith, while being a highlight of the first Suicide Squad, isn't really saying much because the bar was set extremely low for that movie. I'm not a huge fan of Harley Quinn or Margot Robbie, for that matter, so I'm not too stoked about hearing that she's going to be returning back for another go in that role. But unfortunately, I don't make the casting or creative decisions with Warner Brothers DC movies, so I'm just going to have to take what I can get with it. Third, in the movie news, so I've got quite a few pieces of Disney / Marvel / Star Wars updates. So they're all kind of all in one, but I'm going to kind of skim some of the details on this first one as it involves a lot of financial and business blah 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 boring stuff. So in a recent report from Bloomberg, the Disney / Fox mergers appear to be winding down with a potential closing date as early as March 8th. Which coincidentally is the day that Captain Marvel releases. The closing of this deal would be a welcome sight for Marvel fans. I'm one of those, as Disney will retain the live-action rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four properties. On the heels of that report is a report from Variety that states that Disney is also in active talks with AT&T to buy the company's stake in Hulu. The sale would reportedly bring AT&T close to $1 billion and in turn give Disney 70% ownership in the Hulu streaming service. And that would be jumped up from the current 30% they would get from the Fox-Disney merger because Fox owns 30% of the shares in Hulu. This just solidifies what I've been stating in previous episodes about the canceled Netflix Marvel shows going over to Hulu once their 2-year contract expires with Netflix. If Disney can acquire that extra 40% and add that to the 30% they'll get from Fox, This would be a perfect platform for their more mature and less kid-friendly properties. So, moving on to the Star Wars section of this. In Star Wars news, there's a bit of a rumor mill going on, and no, I'm not going to touch on the Rotten Tomatoes score. I want to see review comments bombing, whatever, of Captain Marvel and Star Wars Episode 9, because I don't feel like giving those neckbeard lowlives any more credibility than they already have gotten from online news journalists. They just feed on it, and I'm not going to do that. But the newest rumor comes from Express, so take this with a grain of salt. But according to them, George Lucas had a hand in, quote, numerous sequences to fine-tune some of the legacy characters and their interactions with some of the sequel trilogy characters, unquote. Not only that, but apparently he also directed Abrams, quote, with Mark Hamill in exactly how the character of Luke Skywalker should be done, with the studio hoping to avoid backlash that they saw with him in The Last Jedi. Depending on what you think of his talents and his skills as a filmmaker, bringing back George Lucas as a creative force in a galaxy far, far away might either make you cheer or roll your eyes and hope that it's not true hearing this news. I personally don't feel like it would be that terrible of an idea to bring him on for this last movie to help with plot points or story planning, but I don't think Abrams would allow him anywhere near dialogue, because George Lucas doesn't need to be anywhere around dialogue. But like I said, take every bit of that with a grain of salt. And lastly, IO9 was able to get a sneak peek at the Galaxy's Edge theme park, and they have an extensive list over on their site. I highly recommend going and checking it out. I will leave a link in the description, so if you're interested in checking it out, go click the link, because they list off 77 things that they loved about the park. Side note, 77 being the year the first Star Wars movie was released. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about all of the 77 things that they discussed. I'm just going to highlight and kind of like bullet point the main stuff that really stood out to me that I'm excited for based off of what they discussed in that article. So, number one, the setting is the current sequel trilogy, which makes sense because that's what's going to be happening moving forward. Rey, Finn, Poe, and BB-8 are all in the park, which I think is great. As Star Wars changes and evolves, the park will too. So whenever they come out with new stuff, that stuff will make its way into the park, which that's awesome. The rides will tell canon stories in the Star Wars universe, which I also think is really, really cool. One thing I really loved was this next point: Star Tours will remain. It's not going anywhere. It's not getting taken down. It will always be there. Next, there will be somehow they're going to have laser beams flying through the air. They said that they won't explain how they did it, but they were able to make it happen. So there will literally be laser beams flying through the air at Galaxy's Edge. I don't know how they're going to do it, but that's so awesome. There will be 9 primary merchandise locations to buy anything from lightsabers to handmade toys to shirts to costumes, everything. There's going to be a life-size Wampa. You'll be able to, there's a shop where you can make your own custom lightsaber and another one where you can build your own droid. There will be 5 main food stands. In some of them, there will be blue milk and also green milk, which I'm completely okay with. John Williams' music won't be playing just like nonstop on a loop. It will only be used when it is necessary, like on rides or certain segments of the park, to kind of help paint that overall tone and feel of the park. And they talk about the app that they're going to release along with the park and the integrations of it and the characters that are going to be throughout the park. But I'm just so stoked for this park to open. I know it's going to be a while before I can make my way to one, and I kind of want to wait to hope that the crowdedness of it won't be as bad when I do finally go. But that being said, I also know that I'll probably end up bawling like a baby as soon as I step foot into the park. Because, I mean, Star Wars has been in my life ever since I can remember. And ever since I was a kid, I remember numerous times of like, man, they should really make a Star Wars theme park. They should really have a Star Wars theme park. There should be a Disneyland, but for Star Wars. And there never was anything that was a Disneyland, but for Star Wars. And now that there is, it's like, and I know I'm not the only kid who ever thought that. I know there's probably literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids throughout the years that have thought, man, they should make a Disneyland, but Star Wars. So I think it's going to be so cool. And I can't wait to finally go and check out Galaxy's Edge. It opens this year, which that's something else too that I thought was interesting is like the first original planning I think was in like 2014, and then the first bit of construction started in 2017, and it's opening this year. Like that's insane. Like it went up super fast. I don't know. Shout out to Disney, and like that's amazing. Anyway, so this concludes this episode of the Scruffy Looking Nerd Herders podcast. Thank you guys so much for your support. Please, if you've liked what you've heard, follow, subscribe, like, review, all that good stuff. If you're on iTunes, please leave a review. It helps get my podcast out there more people listening. I can grow the community and I can do more stuff. Share with your friends. Like I said, I'm on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean. I'm on YouTube, so share, comment, like, subscribe on all those things if you can. There's just so many ways to listen to the podcast. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at SLNH Podcast, and go check out slnhpodcast.com. I also have merch. I will put a link in the description. And thank you so much for your reviews and your comments and your messages. It really helps me grow the podcast and get better, and I love interacting with you guys because it makes me feel like what I'm doing is worth it. So thank you for all of your support and your comments and all your reviews. Everyone, this is Tyler from the Scruffy Looking Nerd Herders podcast signing off, and may the Force be with you.